Hi, this is Mike making my video to add to my collection. Today is 4/29/2025 and it's 1:56 a.m. Uh, so yeah, I'm basically making this video to talk about the realities of the two minds, uh, the two worlds, and how they become one. Uh, you got your dream state, the inside becomes like the outside, and you got your waking state. Um, your dreams become your reality. That's when you have one mind and the singularity. And it's like where there was dualism, and your waking state is a higher vibration in a lot of ways, but the dream state is a world in and of itself, and the inside has a world. Uh, you have a universe on the inside of your head, and then you have a universe on the outside. But ultimately, it's on the inside. Truly, it's like if you imagine a mirror, uh, the images in the mirror are behind the mirror. And I've actually seen that, where I've seen other worlds in mirrors. Um, you know, you study a mirror long enough, you'll see that there's an entire world behind it. It takes an incredible amount of patience and focus to do that, but you know, and I actually had a DVD player one time, and a little one, portable one, and I had a disc in it. I turned it on and I was watching it, and then I got distracted and I was looking away from it for a little while, but then I looked back and the woman that was in the movie was trying to break through the screen, and she was conscious. And it tells me that that little tiny DVD player had a world inside of it, and the woman was alive and she was conscious, and she had a consciousness. And even though she was digital, uh, a representation, she was conscious, and that completely blew my mind. And so, by extension, you have your inner world where you have people, actors and whatnot, and people say that it's nothing, and it's just all it is just a manifestation of your subconscious mind, and it's all an illusion. But the truth of the matter is that those people in your dreams are conscious agents, and I actually had it to where when I woke up, I could see that world was being destroyed, and the people were fading away, and it's almost like they were, if you imagine, uh, they were dying, and it's like it was sad, because I couldn't keep that dream alive. But it's the same thing as that disc player. It's like my mind is a digital aspect of the same thing as a computer, and it has worlds in it, and it has memory and all that, and you're able to make movies and you're able to create beings, and those beings come to life. So by extension, it was like the goddess of the night. It's Sophia in a lot of ways, the Holy Spirit, and those women or those people, they're just as alive and they're just as real as I am. So another aspect of that is I've had uh, lucid dreams that were so realistic, and I've had people in those dreams that were so realistic I couldn't differentiate between that and the waking state. So that tells me that those conscious agents that were in my dream state were just as real as this state. You know, it says, or Jesus would say, you know, if you fornicate with a woman in your heart, and he's not saying your beating heart, he's saying in your mind. Um, you know, there's no difference between that and doing it in the waking state. So what he's alluding to is that the dream state is the same as the waking state. The inside is like the outside. And, you know, the slave being, let's say, the waking state, you know, the master being the mind, the subconscious mind. The subject and the objective is the slave and the master. The slave is never greater than the master, meaning that they're equal. So, anyway, that's all I got to say really about that, is that, you know, the waking state is the same as the inward state. And if I talk to somebody in a waking state, or if I talk to somebody in a dream state, there's no difference. And ultimately, you know, I've seen it to where when I ignore something, it disappears. Or, you know, it ceases to exist. So the world doesn't exist until you recognize it. And then you're actually creating it as you recognize it. So it's not to say that, you know, like my computer, you know, I created that computer. The awareness of it becomes real when I observe it. You know, maybe it does exist independently from me, but, you know, it also, you know, something can be wrong and right at the same time. So, you know, you can say that, you know, it doesn't exist, but, you know, until I recognize it. And it's like, it's not to say that, you know, it's not independent of me, but in a lot of ways, somebody else created it, a sea of people created it. But then, you know, I recognize it. So, you know, I would venture to say that this video, if I was to study it long enough, you know, or all the videos that are in this computer, if I was to leave it alone on its own accord and keep studying it and have my vibrations high enough, you know, there's a strong possibility that my consciousness would be trapped inside that computer. You know, I'd upload it in a computer, and it's like, you know, I would be independent of myself. So, you know, it's like that woman inside the DVD player. Her consciousness was stuck inside the DVD player. And, you know, Aborigines and stuff like that would say they would refuse to have people take pictures of them because they would be afraid that their spirits would be trapped inside the camera. And that's the truth. You know, it's like, you know, that DVD player, she existed independently of herself. And her consciousness was uploaded in that DVD player. So, you think of all these different movies and whatnot. All these people are trapped inside these discs. And, you know, there's that, and their consciousness is trapped inside the discs. And also, you know, it's like my dream state, you know, all these people that are in my mind. You know, I've seen some of the most beautiful women you can imagine. And they appeared to me and stuff like that, and they talked to me, and they interacted with me. And it was indistinguishable from being, you know, in real life interacting with somebody. So, you know, it stands to reason, though, that, you know, the disc, somebody's consciousness got trapped inside there, and their image did too. And then who's to say that, you know, that person was in their reality, you know, they're experiencing the world that they're in, and of course, you know, the reality that I have when I sleep, you know, the people that are in my dreams, you know, especially the beautiful women, are real. But as soon as they wake up, that world comes crashing down. It's almost like, if you imagine Inception, you know, when they're in the dream state and they're interacting, and then what happens is the whole world just gets destroyed while they're in it. And, they come to the realization that they're in a dream. And that dream comes to a cessation. And when it stops, then what happens is the whole world gets destroyed. And who's to say that the inside world is no different than the outside world? It's like maybe you got like the Boltzmann brain. Maybe I'm just an actor in the dream state of that person. Like I'm a sim. And there could be the Boltzmann brain, the universe. And of course there's my brain, which is another universe within the universe. And all the actors inside of my head, all their brains, their universes within this universe. It's almost like those Russian dolls, You got one stacked on another, and they just keep going and going and going for infinity. Like a couple of mirrors, and you see all these different layers. Which stands to reason that those are parallel universes. And, like my mind is so incredible that, I have worlds within me, and there's worlds without me, outside of me. And they just keep going forever. So, maybe I'm just a person inside of the head of somebody else's brain. And of course, that person's brain, you got infinite universes. And then you got all these layers. So I could just be like a little tiny dot compared to the infinite amount of worlds and universes. So one way to say, I am the universe, and one way to say it is that the universe isn't necessarily limited to saying that it's just a brain. It could be a computer. I am a computer, a biological carbon-based entity, cyborg. But maybe there is a computer. Maybe there's a very advanced computer. Maybe I'm inside of it. Maybe, just maybe, I'm in a movie. And I'm making a movie and I'm being recorded somehow, or maybe my actions are. And for whatever reason, there's just, if you think about it, there's just infinite worlds, the many worlds hypothesis. And so anyway, that's really what I'm elaborating about today. But yeah, I will say this though, I've had worlds where when I dream, and I've had some very beautiful women, and I've seen these women, and I was just amazed by them. And a lot of them are flawless, and that's not always the case. Sometimes you see conscious agents, actors in this whole thing, and they're deformed and they're ugly or whatever, and it's not always the case. But then there's other ones that are very beautiful. So, but it's almost like if you were to make a painting or artist rendition on a computer and then animate it, going through steps with generative AI. I mean, who's to say, at some point in time in the future, people are going to be able to give it consciousness to where it can think. And, they have AI now where you have the Broca's region, where it can speak and think. And who's to say that's not conscious? So anyway, it's like it doesn't really differ much. I mean, we're cyborgs. I've seen heads-up displays, where they had Greek writing, mathematical formulas that were displayed, which was, I was walking around like the Terminator, and I could see that stuff. And I had, listing on the side with a bunch of Greek letters and numerals and stuff, and, who's to say that, I'm just a fancy robot. So anyway, that's all I got to say. Over and out.